Well, thank you so much for taking some time to answer some questions from the viewers. We're really appreciative of that. This is my wife, Bonnie. She just wanted to say hi to you.
Hi,
This
Dr.
is,
McDougall. I just want to say I'm a big fan of yours.
oh, good.
I am 51 and Will is 45, and we've been doing your program for 2 years. And we have never been healthier in our lives. So we would never expect to be middle aged and this healthy. And we are so grateful for the work that you have done. And
Well, thanks.
yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks. And I'm going to let Will, who's going to ask the questions, take over from here. But I will be going to Costa Rica. So hopefully
Oh,
I'll get to
good.
meet.
Oh, good.
Yeah, get to meet you and Mary there.
Well, that'll be fun. How is the
Thank you.
video? Is it okay?
Yeah,
I think
great.
so, yes.
Great.
Oh,
Talk to you soon.
sometime what I'd like to do is I've got to get this whole Skype thing a little bit more theatrical, but we'll put up with what we have today.
Oh, yeah, we're
Okay.
just trying to get the content. So,
Sure enough. Well, it would be nice to see you in Costa Rica, and I'm glad you've done so well. And you know what? Everybody does.
Yeah,
You know, it's like taking a hardcore alcoholic and taking them off the booze. They always get well, or taking a 2-pack-a-day smoker off the cigarettes. They always get well. If you take your friends, which is most of them, I mean, not just a few of them, but most of them, who are fat and sick from food poisoning, from the American diet, you take them off the food poisoning, they all get well. I
it's
mean,
amazing.
it always happens.
Yeah.
It's nice to have such an effective tool to share with your friends.
Yes, and he has his brother doing it now. So,
Okay.
and he was, he had all those problems. He's very, very unhealthy at that time, and so he's really seeing some major changes. So we try to spread the word as much as we can. Will has over 7,500 viewers
Oh my
promoting
goodness.
this
Well,
program.
good.
So,
Well, what an opportunity to talk to 7,500 people. I hope we can at least get them
Yeah.
to, at least think about things differently, because it's pretty hard in a world so confused by the supplement industry, by the meat producers. I don't know. You have to take the trouble to think these days if you're going to get yourself out of trouble. And you don't even really have to read. All you have to do is open your eyes and think, and you can figure it out. But there are so many, I guess you would call them opposing point of views. I use terms like liars. Yeah,
that's a good.
there's so many people out there that are confusing the public,
Yeah.
and they put great effort into it. So it would be okay, I guess, if we're just talking about television sets. But what we're talking about is we're talking about your children and your spouses and your parents and your sisters and brothers, and your coworkers are being poisoned.
They're
And
being
they're
poisoned.
suffering from obesity and heart disease and constipation and breast cancer and arthritis, and they just think that there's no hope. And as I say, there's a lot of money and a lot of egos that keep the confusion up.
It does, and I'm an environmental engineer. So for me, your program, it takes care of a lot of the other major issues out there as well. We're reducing our impact on the environment, the oceans, the animal welfare issue, and it covers such a broad spectrum of benefits, not just us personally, but on a global issues as well. So, just want to say this is huge for me.
Well, I see it that way too. Not that we're going to save the world, but the world's not going to be saved unless they get the food right.
That's right. It starts with the food.
You can solve all the oil problems and a lot of the other environmental problems, but until you get food right, we're doomed.
That's true. Until we look at what's on the end of our fork, it's not going to change. Anyway, I wanted to thank you, and I'm going to let Will take over from here, Dr.
Well,
McDougall.
Costa Rica is going to be a lot of fun. We've done it for, we've probably been doing it for 25 years and maybe 30 trips. So it'll be fun to see you there.
Yeah, it will be a good time for us as well.
yeah, I'm
Looking forward to it. Take
Good.
care.
Well, I asked my viewers on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube to post some questions, and I got so many. I don't think we'll be able to get through them, but we'll start and see how far we get.
Well, if you feel that way about it, I'm happy to just give you brief answers, and we can maybe get whatever.
Sure.
Good.
Yeah, so I had really great results as expected, and I started this Potato Strong channel to just spread your message And but for people that aren't familiar with the starch solution, I was wondering if you'd like to give everyone a brief summary of what it composes of.
Well, I've written, I don't know, 12 or 13 national best-selling books over my career. And actually, I'm about to sign a deal for another one, and I never wanted to write another book again. But the last book that I wrote, I decided not to put my name in the title. The other books are the McDougall program, McDougall's medicine. So I decided to take a different stand and to take a big risk. But I've always been a risk taker. And I asked that the title of the book be called The Starch Solution. And the word starch, of course, gets a reaction, and almost always negative. But the word starch is crucial. Since 1977, people have not understood the word starch. It was changed when the dietary goals were instituted in 1977 in the United States for political reasons. They were changed to call the foods that I talk about complex carbohydrates. And complex carbohydrates are unidentifiable. I have no idea what a complex carbohydrate looks like on my plate, but your grandmother or great-grandmother used to know what a starch looked like on her plate. Starches are the foods that have fueled probably 9.5 billion of the 10 billion people that have walked this earth. And that's where your listeners, viewers have to stop right now and think. If they can think about this for a moment, then everything will make sense. If you can think about the fact that most people, most human beings, throughout all of human history, they've obtained the bulk of their calories from a kind of food that you should identify as starch. Starches are foods like rice and wheat and potatoes and sweet potatoes and corn. When I say those words, when I say corn, you should say Mayans and Aztecs and American Indians. And if I say rice, you should say, well, heck, that's all of Asia, the Philippines, China, Japan. If I say potatoes, those of you who are involved in a little bit of history, you'd say South America, the Andes. That fueled the people of the Andes for, thousands of years. Potatoes did. Sweet potatoes in the Caribbean and also in Asia. Beans and, they're starches. These are the foods that have provided the bulk of the calories. And we're talking about 90% of the calories for people in the past. And when they provided calories, people were trim, hardy, strong, warriors, beautiful. Well, let me give you some examples. The gladiators that have been written about recently from 1800 years ago. The gladiators of 1800 years ago, the winners, the men who won and got to walk out of the Colosseum with all their body parts, they were known as the barley men because they lived on barley and beans. The winners lived on barley and beans, as do the winners today in athletic events. All your long-distance winners live on starch. I think one of the more interesting examples is that since 1968, all of the endurance events for the Olympics have been won by starch eaters. These would be the Kenyans and Ethiopians who live on corn. So if you want to be strong and beautiful, and in addition, avoid heart attacks and breast cancer and hemorrhoids, then you figure out what human beings eat, and what human beings eat is starch. Now, some way or another, it's not necessary, but I can go into some thoughts about it. Starch has been relegated to fattening, dangerous food. But again, I ask your listeners, your viewers, to stop for a minute and think about world history, even the current world, even though it's changing rapidly, and you think about populations of people who've lived on starch. The Hawaiians lived on breadfruit and taro. They were strong, hardy warriors, no fat people. You don't know an Asian. You don't know a person from China, Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia. You don't know of a person prior to 1980 who was fat. But today, if you go to Vietnam and Cambodia and China, half the population is fat. 12% of the Chinese are diabetic and half of them are pre-diabetic. And what happened since 1980 is these people became wealthy, And they stopped eating the starch. They replaced the starch with meat and dairy and more oil, and they're fat and sick. Some of the fattest, sickest people in the world. It's happened in India. It's happening every place in the world. So when I give you these examples, I want you to look right now because, next week, where are you going to find a starch eater? I mean, everybody's at McDonald's and Burger King and eating ice cream. So to succeed, you must understand that human beings are starch eaters. They're starchivores, starchitarians. Once you get that, everything's easy. Whether you be a vegetarian or not a vegetarian, once you get somewhere between 70 and 90% of your calories from rice, corn, potatoes, and so on, beans, peas, and lentils, whether that other 10% of calories, you get them from broccoli, sprouts, kale, or, and I don't recommend it, or fish and chicken and cupcakes. I mean, as long as you get somewhere between 70 to 90% of your calories from starch, you've got a big step forward in solving your health and appearance problems. I, of course, would prefer you eat 100% vegan, no animal foods for a whole bunch of reasons, and no vegetable oils. And the main reason I'd hope that you would take the attitude that I have is because it's been my experience, and I've taken care of thousands of patients. I'm a medical doctor. It's been my experience that people cannot do a little bit. I've never met a cigarette smoker who's quit by cutting down. You can't do it. Or a drunk never sobered up by switching to beer and wine. It's just like the listeners here, yourselves or your friends and relatives. You may want to get well. You may have heard that eating beef will give you colon cancer, and it does. You may have heard that cheese and milk give you arthritis and constipation, and they do. And you may want to change, and you're thinking that, I'm going to do a little bit better. But it just never seems to work out, that intention to do a little bit better, because those foods, just like tobacco and heroin and cocaine and alcohol, they're just so attractive, habituating, whatever word you want to use, that very few people are strong enough to be moderate and reasonable and sensible. And that's why I teach the program as black and white. Not that it has to be, that's probably not a politically correct word anymore, as red and green or stop and go, because you just plain and simple can't do a little bit. You put that fried chicken or pepperoni pizza in the refrigerator and you say, I'm just going to have a little bit every other day. You're not going to do that. Every time that refrigerator door opens, that chicken or that pepperoni pizza is going to reach out and grab you. And it's just not going to happen for you the way you deserve. So as you learn the principles I teach, even though you may say that they are harsh and difficult, in my opinion, they're really easy. And once you learn them, they're simple, and you wonder why everybody else doesn't. Things that are hard, just stop for a minute, the viewers, just stop for a minute and look around you. What's hard is being so fat, you have to ask for a seatbelt extender when you get on an airplane. That's hard. What's hard is having lumps in your breasts or having a bowel movement every 3 to 12 days with the use of a laxative. What's hard is to go into the clothing store and ask for the extra large size. Where's the extra large size? Those are difficult. Or, having trouble walking up the stairs because you're so arthritic or so overweight. What I recommend, which is to eat bean burritos and spaghetti and marinara sauce and really, really the tastiest foods that you could possibly put on your plate. That's easy.
Yeah,
that was a long answer, sorry.
No, it's okay. I've been pushing I created created and modified a bunch of recipes, and they're really simple and tasty. And I wanted to show that it wasn't just kale and quinoa. Like people don't, when you think about the first day or two when I did this, I just ate vegetables and I was starving, and then I saw your starch solution and it sort of, turned on the light. So I have baked fries and pasta, pizza, and they're all low fat. I don't use any oil. And sticking to it to me was easy because it changes your taste buds, and the food is really filling and tasty, and it's all the comfort foods like mashed potatoes and gravy, all that stuff. And so I'm pushing that hard because that's what attracts people is the tasty food, and shows that it's easy and filling. So I was going to ask you, because I got so many questions.
Just to emphasize your point, Will, is anybody out there that's serious, that's trying to become vegetarian or vegan, if you head for the kale and the broccoli and the cauliflower, you're going to starve to death. You can't live on lettuce leaves. And that's one of the more serious mistakes. And the other serious mistake a would-be vegetarian makes is they go into vegetarian margarines and soy burgers and soy cheeses, or hit the nuts and seeds really hard, and they just don't accomplish their goals, because that's not what this diet is about. The diet is about starch. It's about rice, corn, potatoes, and then you can add the green and yellow vegetables, and maybe on occasion you can go out and have a soy burger. Well, maybe. We don't have to get into that.
Yeah. Speaking of green and yellow vegetables, does it matter, like orange, red, purple vegetables when you say green and yellow? Somebody asked me.
That's a good question. They're green. To be fully descriptive, you would say red, green, purple, orange, yellow. What I think the best way to think about them is they are non-starchy
Right.
vegetables.
Yes.
They're non-starchy, and if you try and live off green peppers, you'll starve to death. If you try and live off mashed potatoes, and you mentioned those mashed potatoes, and I got a big smile because it sounds like you also. For me, mashed potatoes is one of my favorite foods. On our trip to Hawaii, where we took some guests a few months ago, we asked for heavy mashed potato entrees for lunch and dinner, and people just loved it. I bet there's some listeners out there that can think, if I had a great big plate of mashed potatoes and a nice tasty gravy and maybe some peas and corn and put a little salt on it, because salt tastes good, a little salt, I could really eat that. Or maybe some of the people who have more of an Asian type of background, you grew up on rice and various rice dishes, or if you say we're from the quote Mediterranean and you grew up on pasta dish, to think of the idea of having a big bowl of spaghetti or some other type of pasta dish, it should bring back great memories and make you really, really want to eat these foods. These are comfort foods. They are your foods.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the potatoes in every form. I called it potato strong for that reason. It was so filling and.
Oh yeah, potatoes. You can live on. By the way, you can live on potatoes. I know you know this, Will. You can live on potatoes and water alone. You don't need anything else. Just potatoes and water. People have done this, both in experimental settings as well as in historical settings, where all they had was potatoes in Russia and Poland around 1900, and post World War II in Germany, that's all they had was potatoes. So people can and have lived on potatoes and water alone, or sweet potatoes and water. With grains and legumes, you have to add a little bit of fruit and vegetable. The foods are complete. Don't let anybody kid you. They got all the protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals you need on a simple diet.
Yeah, I really, what I liked about Starch Solution was I try to tell people to respect the history and understand how important the starches were for survival and for good health. Let me see here. Some of the women were asking, like, with a low-fat diet, that whether they should add sometimes, like if they have dry skin or hair shedding issues, a little bit of fats like avocado or nuts and seeds, like, without going too far, but just if that would help, or if there's
Yes.
other issues going on.
Yeah, it is. I have read. I really haven't experienced it, but there are many scientists who did experiments on very low-fat diets in the past, and whether it was their bias or an actual occurrence. One of the things I think about from a few studies that I read that were done in the 1950s is they complained of dry skin. Now, I have to tell you, on a practical sense, I've taken care of, I personally, at my live-in clinics, have taken care of over 6,000 people. And probably, as a doctor, I've taken care of far more than 12,000 people, or I've actually touched them and talked to them. And the issue of dry skin is extremely, extremely rare. And the answer I would give is like the one that you gave. You could add some nuts and seeds and avocados, but the problem is most of my patients are way too fat. And you open the door for nuts and seeds and avocados for these people, maybe their skin will become more oily. You can experiment with that. I've done it myself. I've had a whole bunch of nuts, and I know the difference in the consistency of my skin. The problem is most of the people who are issuing that complaint, not all, but most, are also dealing with weight problems. So you have to realize when you eat fat, fats and nuts and avocados, when you eat fat, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. So you'll wear it under your skin in terms of obesity, and you'll wear it on your skin, which may be okay to a point. But that fat also feeds bacteria that cause acne lesions. And I have examples on my website of some really, really distressful situations of a couple of young women, and I've seen it hundreds of times, where people with can't understand it. I'm past my teen years, or maybe they're in their teen years, and I just can't get rid of this acne. Well, as soon as they change their diet, the oil goes away, usually in about 3-4 days, maybe 2. Mm-hmm. Your skin, the greasiness goes away. And then what happens over the next month is these acne, these very disturbing lesions, they completely go away. Which brings me just to another thought, and I'm going to end it here. I obviously need a haircut. I've got a big weekend coming up, and we got about 300 people showing up for this weekend that we're putting on. So I'm going to the person who takes care of my hair this afternoon, and almost every time I go in, or occasionally when I go on, I say to her, or we get into a conversation about the greasiness, because she all day deals with people's hair. And I say, you find people that have really oily, greasy hair, don't you? She says, yeah. And usually people think, well, that's a mystery, or maybe it's genetics or whatever. Excuse me, the fat you eat's the fat you wear. And if you're going to eat all that olive oil or that bacon fat or that cow fat, it goes on your skin. So you have greasy cow fat skin. You got pig oil all over your hair. Congratulations. Or cheese oil all over your face. Where do you think that oil comes?
Yeah. And
it's distressing for people, and there are a lot of people. But even if it was just like 2%, I would guess it's 98%. People really care, and if you give them the truth, and you give them an option like you and I are, Will, an option that works, always works. It's not like it works part of the time. It's just like a drunk. When you sober them up, they always get well. You give them an option that works. There are people out there, given the opportunity, who will not hesitate. It may be a learning experience. It may take them, a few days to kind of pick up all the pieces, but it'll change their life, just like it has for you and your wife, and I'm sure some of your friends. And that's worth all of the time you spend trying to talk people into doing this that don't do it and think you're an alien. Yeah. If you just get one person once in a while, it's worth the trouble.
Yeah, I get lots of great emails. My skin's super soft. I'm in Canada. It's super cold.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have any problem. Like I'm 45. It's so soft. But so I don't. There's.
Well, people can always put oil on their skin too.
That's true, yeah.
If you've got dry skin, that's the way to do it. And some of that oil is absorbed, by the way, but not to any significant amount that you want to talk about. Yeah. So yes, you just put a little. I don't know what I couldn't recommend the best moisturizing substance, but it's very easy to condition the skin from the outside. You don't want to condition it from the inside.
That's true, yeah. That's true. Let's see. For some people have done this, they say, they're doing it religiously, and they might still have high blood pressure or high triglycerides or high cholesterol. What have you done, or what would you suggest in that case?
Well, there are two things. First of all, first and second of all, there are genetic problems that people have. There's genetic elevated cholesterol, where people, because of their family tendency or a real genetic problem of hypercholesterolemia, they just plain and simple run high cholesterol levels, and it's important to address this. So there are genetic issues, which, by the way, you cannot change, so you might as well set them aside. And then there's also abuse that we've done over many years. You're 45. Maybe just recently you changed your diet. We didn't get into that, but you spent 43 years testing your body's strengths, and you've done damage. So some of that damage continues. So there's two issues, and then there's bad luck and the wrath of God, which are three things I can't control, nor can you. So it's very rare, excuse me, it's very, very rare for somebody to fix the problem and not get well. Again, I want to go back to, a cigarette smoker. They almost always stop coughing when they stop the cigarettes, and alcoholics almost always get their life back. You could probably find me an exception, sure. The issue of diet is that powerful. Now, Will, I'm going to say something that's going to offend some of your listeners, but not you. And that is, I had a mentor myself. His name was Walter Kempner. He was of the rice diet. And I never had a chance to meet Mr. Kempner, Dr. Kempner, very famous man. I heard he used to say something. He used to say, all dieters are liars. And I have to say that's true. The people I deal with, and again, I've dealt with, so let's just say 12,000 people, maybe more, certainly not less. And it's not that people intentionally lie. It's not like they go, I'm just going to go lie to this doctor. It's just that we have a way as human beings of kind of rationalizing things and not seeing things as maybe they actually are. And so there's often a communication problem between myself and the patient. And I assume it's my problem. I haven't done a good enough job communicating. So when I get down to the details with people, and I find out actually what they're really doing is, well, they're going out to eat a lot, and yeah, they do have a cookie every day, and but that doesn't really count because that's at the end of the day. It's usually a communication problem, and you can think of it as rough as Walter Kempner said, all dieters are liars. But that's not really, my intention is not to criticize, it's just that they just somewhere or another are deceiving themselves as to what they're really supposed to do. I've been on this dietary mission myself since about 1974. So it's been, 40 years. And I can tell you, Will, you can actually, if you want to have some fun, because I know you really like our work and the things we've done, if you go to my website and you look under About Dr. McDougall, you'll find a series of TV shows. For almost 30 years, I was co-host of a TV show, and maybe I still am if we reshoot. And I had my own television show for many years called McDougall MD. But I put in some segments that we did over maybe a 15-year period of time. And if you look carefully, and I'm not exactly proud of this, except for the fact it is a teaching example, you'll see a couple of shows in there where I was pretty darn fat. I would guess I weighed maybe 20, 30 pounds more than I do now. It's obvious as a host. And I know why. I mean, I know exactly why I was in that kind of condition. And, fortunately, prior to that, I was young and it didn't show. And since that time, I'm old and I really eat well. I mean, I eat a very simple diet. I eat rice and beans. In fact, we'll have rice and beans tonight, and we're going to have maybe tamales for lunch. Mary, my wife, for the last 44 years, my partner and everything, we went to something like Whole Foods. It's a similar natural food store in our town, but you can do this at Whole Foods or any natural food store. There's some tamales, black bean tamales that you can buy, and all you do is put them in the oven and steam them. I mean, our diet is as simple as corn and beans, or sweet potatoes and broccoli, or Mary will make some oatmeal here in a few minutes. We eat a very simple meal plan, and almost without exception. I mean, it's so rare that we go out to eat. And usually it's some kind of distressing social situation where somebody wants to bring us to a vegan restaurant. And they, even though we make effort beforehand to tell them what we want and we don't want oil in it, almost always it's a bad experience.
Yes.
So anyway, it's just a matter of keeping at it. The truth is the truth. The closer you get to a simple diet of starch and vegetables and fruits, no vegetable oil. The vegetable oil is food poison. Corn oil, olive oil, they'll grease you up, promote cancer and heart disease. Don't do this. As simple as you can make your diet, mashed potatoes and water. The quicker you'll get your health back, you'll get trim, you'll get the problem solved. But it's not all that easy, so don't get frustrated. Just know the truth and work at it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what you ate. You've told me most of it. So, what do you find that you eat kind of three main meals and you're full, without snacking, pretty much, or?
Let's see. It depends on the day. It depends on how busy Mary and I are. We will usually have oatmeal for breakfast, but there have been phases we've gone through where we've had hash brown potatoes cooked oil free. That's been several years. But we usually just have oatmeal, plain oatmeal, no milk, of course. Sometimes Mary will have a little brown sugar on hers. Usually I like mine without, but I can have a little brown sugar. So that's generally our breakfast. The grandkids come over and we make pancakes and put a little maple syrup on for them. And then lunchtime, it's often leftovers. Or on occasion, we'll go out to a local taqueria and get whole beans, a little clean rice, some lettuce, and maybe if we want to splurge, a little guacamole on it. But most of the time, it's home leftovers. And most of the evening meals for us are the things I mentioned, like prepared food, like the tamales or beans. Mary probably cooks 30 different kinds of beans, and every one of them has a different flavor. And then we'll have the beans with a whole wheat bread that we buy locally. Just get it in the store. It's all baked with a little bread, or we'll have rice with our beans. Our meal plans are really that simple, and we do use a little salt. Mm-hmm. And we do use a little simple sugar, not a lot. I would guess that if most of you came over to our house for lunch or dinner, you would say that's not enough salt in the food. Well, we've kind of adapted our taste, not necessarily out of purpose, because salt and sugar are not as bad as advertised. But it's just been, we just hardly use any of that, and that's what our palates are adapted to. If I had your listeners, the people watching this video, over for lunch or dinner, or you came to my clinic, which I run in Santa Rosa, California, or you came on one of our adventure trips, there would definitely be a salt shaker on the table, because that's what you're missing is salt. People love salt, and it's the easiest way to make the transition, I think, unless you have a real salt sensitivity problem, is to use sufficient salt on the surface of the food to make the food taste the way you want, and maybe even you put a little maple syrup or simple sugar on it, unless you have a problem with these simple sugars, which some people do. It makes the transition effortless. Meat tastes terrible. I don't think I could get one of your viewers to eat a raw pork chop for me.
Yeah,
or a boiled piece of chicken.
Yeah,
They won't do it. They say, look, I can't eat that boiled piece of chicken. You must add some breading with salt. Or you must add some barbecue sauce. Some way you must cover up that disgusting flavor, Doc. I can't eat that. I bet I couldn't get one of your listeners to eat cheese without salt. They wouldn't eat it. I used to try and get my kidney patients to eat saltless cheese, and they'd say to me, Doc, that's just a glob of grease. And so you have to add a tremendous amount of salt. You can't get kids to drink milk, white milk, when they're young, unless you add sugar and chocolate flavor to it. Yeah. It's disgusting. And so what we do with our meal plan is we use rice, corn, potatoes, and we add a little simple sugar, of flavoring, a little bit of salt, and then you get your health back. You don't miss anything.
Yeah. That's what I found too. It's the best.
You discovered all that, and hopefully your friends are going to learn the same thing.
Yeah, I keep sharing all my food every day on Instagram and Facebook. I post what I eat over and over again, and people say how great it looks, and they get inspired. So that's.
Well, let me ask you, Will. Then, so you share all this with these people, and I'm sure some of them think you're crazy, and some of them appreciate it, and some of them wish they could do it. But do you ever find occasionally somebody does it?
Eats the way I do, you mean?
Yeah. You're taking all this effort to try and convince people to eat potatoes and starch. Do you ever find anybody does it?
Oh, yeah.
And what happens?
Well, they love it, and then they get results. I've had paleo people switch over. What I'm trying to show also is I don't do a lot of exercise, but I want to show that you're not going to become this deficient, weak person if you don't eat meat and dairy and all that protein, because it's so prevalent in this day and age. So I just want to show, like, a man as well, that's eating this way. I don't worry about protein or anything like that. And so I get emails all the time, and that's what keeps me going, is the people that not only are doing it, but the people that are switching and becoming, more into. That's what my goal is, to get more and more people doing this.
Well, that was my point, Will. Is what I wanted to ask you is, if you have as much fun as I do. In other words, once in a while somebody listens, and then what happens is all their weight problems go away, their colitis goes away, their arthritis goes away, their acne goes away. They increase their running times dramatically if they're a runner, and they all of a sudden are lasting longer and running the race faster. I mean, it always happens, doesn't it? And doesn't it make you feel good?
It sure does, yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically all I do now. I spend all day answering questions, doing videos, and posting pictures of food, and sharing all the scientific things that you and others share. Because, I mean, once you do it and you discover it, you want to share it with other people. That's my mission in life now, is just to do it. And that's
But the reason is, well, it's a natural tendency of human beings. Enjoyment in life comes from helping other people. That's where true enjoyment comes from. So you and I have this great opportunity, by using this simple, cost-free, side effect-free message that actually cuts the food bill by 40%. We have a chance to share with people, and I'm just trying to get the greedy side out of you, Will. I'm trying to get you to admit to your listeners that the reason you do this is because you have so much fun.
Yeah.
It's not you're happy to see them get better, but the reason you and I do this is because people come back to us and say, thank you for saving my husband, my child, my wife, my life, my job. And you go, oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. It's just so much fun to do this.
Yeah, it's not just, it helps us as well as them.
And of course, there's no such thing as protein deficiency. And as we talked about, gladiators and endurance winners eat this way. You can't We were talking, I have a grandson, he's 11. We were talking yesterday about different sports. And he's a big basketball player. And I don't know what basketball players eat, but they're the only hockey players. We also decided hockey players. Only basketball players and hockey players are thin. Baseball players, your National Baseball League players, they're fat. And the football players are fat. But all your endurance runners, your basketball players, your hockey players are thin. And I tried to suggest to my grandson, it may not be true, I really don't know, but in addition to basketball players and hockey players and endurance runners, putting a lot of activity into it, they'd never get to play if they were fat. They'd kick their butts. They'd be off the field. Mm-hmm. But I bet a lot of them have discovered the strengthening, the enduring power that's offered by rice, corn, and potatoes, so that they can be winners. I know the long-distance runners have. I know the bicyclists have, because I work with some of these people. So I know they have. I just don't know what hockey players and basketball players eat. Maybe I should find that out. But I know what football players and basketball players eat, because I can see it.
So for bodybuilding, for people that want to do, because I get emails from men mostly that are, we've been programmed about meat and protein and also testosterone. Would you have any suggestions or changes for bodybuilders as far as what they have to do?
And let me just add here for a minute, Will, because you're sharing this with a lot of people, and I'm sure you'll share with them also, is that on my website, I have hundreds of articles about the different subjects: protein, acne, breast cancer. I also have one that I wrote in 2003 about athletes, and the cover is with fastest man in the world. Who was the fastest man? I'm sorry.
Is that Ben Johnson?
No, it was before him.
Oh,
Carl Lewis. I took care of Carl Lewis. Remember Carl Lewis? I don't know. He was the fastest man in the world. And the cover is a cover of him on Runner's World, Carl Lewis. And in that Runner's World edition is a story about how I helped him. And he followed our diet to to set the world record for the 100-meter dash. He won three gold medals, more gold Olympic medals on following our diet, and talks about it in the issue, and set the record for the three longest long jumps. And as far as I know, the records are still held by Carl Lewis following our diet. He had a beautiful body. Whether he was whether you would consider him, you wouldn't consider him a bodybuilder or one of these muscle men, but I mean, what better athlete could you have than Carl Lewis? And we have many people that are examples. But what you're asking is, what about the men and women who want to have these super big muscles? How do you get them? Well, remember, gladiators were known as the barley men.
Yeah.
So I would guess they probably looked a lot like and performed a lot like Carl Lewis, but they got to walk out of the arena alive, and that counted. So anyway, it depends on what kind of body you're looking for. If you want to build muscle more, there are ways you can do it with food, but they're not always healthy. What you can do is you can add more protein from any source: soybean protein, isolated soy protein, whey protein, beef, pork chops, seafood. What protein does is it raises growth factors in the body, like IGF-1, and that will stimulate muscle growth, and that is true. But if you're taking these protein powders, soy powders, whey powders, etc., you stimulate muscle growth, but you also stimulate cancer growth. And you also stimulate aging. You can't have one without the other. If you get your protein from, say, pork chops or chicken, which is 50% fat, not only do you get the muscle stimulation, but you end up fat. And the bodybuilders that I've worked with over the years who follow our program with maybe some growth stimulant. I'm not saying they don't, because I don't study these bodybuilding vegans, but my guess is many of them take advantage of soy protein and take these growth stimulants. I'm just guessing. But what some vegan bodybuilders have told me, like Andreas Calling, I think was the man's name back in my time, he used to say, and he was not a friend, but I knew him pretty well. He would say, John, he said, the difference between me and the other bodybuilders is they had to diet. They had to starve themselves for a week or two before the event so they'd get that layer of fat off so people could see their muscles. He'd say, I never have to do that. I'm ready to perform every day. Mm-hmm. So you can do that. You can also take testosterone. And some of you are thinking, well, is it safer to take testosterone shots or creams or to eat a high-protein diet? I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether you'd be better off taking testosterone or these whey powders or not. I actually have an opinion, but I'm gonna keep it to myself. Testosterone will grow muscles too, and I mean, just like protein powders, taking testosterone, it has benefits and risks. These are drugs. These things cause effects, and you have to deal with positive and negative effects. So, realize there are ways to change things by using drugs. Protein powders, soy powders, whey powders, testosterone shots, growth hormones. I mean, ask Lance Armstrong.
Yeah,
I mean, these athletes, they take everything they can to win. And I'm not trying to be critical. That's not my job or my place. But there's a lot of performance stimulants, a lot of growth stimulants out there. But I can guarantee you that if you start with basic good nutrition, a starch-based diet, and whatever you add, you're going to be far better off than if you didn't start out on a good diet.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. A lot of people that I sort of that follow me and I talk to, some of them have like a fruit meal, like sometimes for breakfast or maybe even lunch. They eat a lot, like enough to be filling, like a bunch of bananas or other things that in volume that would get them the calories, for a proper
Sure.
breakfast. And so they're a little bit concerned sometimes when the fruit is limited on the starch solution. I know that it's a starch-based diet. I always tell people it's starch-based. You add a little bit of fruit and vegetables, but it's starch-based. But for people that, I guess they're not necessarily following Starch Solution, but what's your take on eating a fruit meal, like say a banana ice cream or a smoothie?
I
Or
think
something?
that's okay. Well, I think it's okay for particularly trim people and particularly young people. But understand that my job, I'm a medical doctor, I'm a board certified internist, I'm a standard doctor. I take care of most of my patients are overweight. My average age is 56 years old. The people I see are scheduled for bypass surgery. They have breast cancer. They have horrible rheumatoid arthritis. If you eat a lot of fruit, there are several consequences that my patients need to know about. One is that's a lot of simple sugar. I mean, fruit is simple sugar. It's not like starch, which is complex sugar. Okay, so simple sugars, they are quickly metabolized, so they're tasty. I mean, they're really tasty, and that's why people eat them. They're quickly metabolized, and so the sense of satiety, satisfaction of hunger, is limited. Starch breaks down slowly and keeps you satisfied for long. So your appetite's going to return quickly, which is not good for my patients trying to lose weight. But many of my patients have heart trouble, and some of them have high triglycerides, which are fats in the blood. And if they eat a lot of fruit, sometimes a lot of fruit is more than zero. When their triglycerides go up, we're fighting to keep their arteries open. I'm trying to do everything I can. So my general recommendation is focused on my patient population. And that's why I tell them, 1 to 4 fruits a day is probably plenty. But if you have some young people who are quick on the go and they want to make a meal of 40 nectarines, and by the way, I have a nectarine tree about 15 feet from me right now that's going to be in bloom in August, and I will probably eat 40 nectarines when it comes, but it's only in bloom for like 4 days a year. So, just realize this is simple sugar. It's quickly metabolized. It raises, because it's high energy, it raises triglycerides. If you're a young, healthy person, think about it. You're a young, healthy person. Look what you've done to yourself already. You've lived on 6 eggs and bacon for breakfast, and you've eaten, fried chicken for lunch, and taken a protein powder shake for dinner, and you're alive. You've drank a half a bottle of whiskey every day, and you're alive. You've smoked 2 packs of cigarettes, and you're alive. I mean, the body's amazing. A few fruits is not going to be an issue that is a deal breaker for you, likely. But remember, my job is to take care of sick people who need to recover quickly, very quickly, because they got heart surgery scheduled next Friday, and they really do.
So for these people that are like younger and active, and I see a lot of them on these social media, they were asking, like, I understand that the fructose in the fruit is processed in the liver, and once the glycogen stores are full, it releases it starts to create the triglycerides. But if they're like burning them off and exercising, and it's
Not an
probably
issue.
okay, right?
Yeah, sure. I can't see any particular problem from any point of view for a healthy, active person to eat more than 4 fruits a day or whatever. However, that doesn't, there are very few fruitarians. I have to deal with people's thinking in terms of extremes. Because whenever you say something to somebody, all they hear is the extreme. You say, well, it's okay to have a piece of chocolate once in a while. Dr. McDougall said that I could eat chocolate all day long. He said it was okay. I heard him say it. So you have to be careful when I say things, and I'm sure you find this too, Will. When you say things to people that you have to realize that they're hearing something different. They're usually hearing what they want to hear. So anyway, you say fruit's okay. Now you've got 2 or 3 of your listeners out there saying, well, I'm going to become a fruitarian. I know people who've been fruitarians. Steve Jobs used to be a fruitarian. In my career, and I've been doing this for a long time, more than 40 years, I've met all kinds of people. The fringe of society has been attracted to me. Every health food, crystal ball, whatever, has come on my doorstep because I'm considered an alternative doctor, which I'm not. I'm just a regular general doctor. I just treat food poisoning by fixing the problem. So there are people who have been fruitarians, but likely you don't know very many of them. It's not a sustainable diet from what I've seen, and I know of no cultures. I know of no societies in history who've ever lived on fruit-based diets. I can't think of, and the reason is fruit is available in season. You know, it happens like in the summer and fall, and then it's gone. You can dry it maybe, but it's rotten and it's gone. Starch is sustainable. Potatoes grow all year long, and even if they didn't, you harvest them and you put them in a cool place and they last for, for months. And if you dry them a little bit, if you freeze dry them, which is what the Incas used to do up in the Andes, they still make in the Andes, they still make a dish called chuño, which is freeze-dried potatoes. So what they did like 10,000 years ago is they would harvest the potatoes up in the Andes, which high altitude, and at night they'd freeze. And then in the daytime it would get really hot in the mountains, and they would dry. And so they made freeze-dried potatoes 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. They still do it today in Peru and the Andes. And they would store these freeze-dried potatoes in a cool spot, and it would last them 10 years. So here you have these people, these villages, these people trying to stay alive during times of good and bad harvest. Well, they knew 10,000 years ago that you could take starch. And by the way, this isn't just potatoes. This is rice or wheat. You harvest it and you put it in a barrel in a cool, dry place, and it lasts for years. So your family doesn't starve to death. You can't do that with fruit or perishable vegetables. They rot. But starch is sustainable. So that's why it has to be a starch-based diet.
Thanks. That's great. Chronic diseases. People are asking about autoimmune, leaky gut, eczema, allergies. What you might recommend, as far as the diet would help that, and also when it doesn't help, like what else can people do?
Well, I've taken care of a lot of rheumatoid patients. We're just publishing research from Oregon Health and Science University on multiple sclerosis. I've taken care of lots of Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis over the years, and many not so clearly named autoimmune diseases. My estimate is that close to 100% of these people are curable. Wow. I published an article in May of 2014 in my newsletter about 10 cases of severe, and we're talking about people who couldn't pick up their children, they couldn't get out of a chair, they couldn't get out of bed, they couldn't shake your hand, of severe inflammatory arthritis, labeled as rheumatoid or psoriatic arthritis or nonspecific arthritis. My experience has been, I actually published research on this about 20 years ago, and the rest of the research says exactly what I'm saying. Well, not exactly. The rest of the research, all that I'm aware of, say for inflammatory arthritis, says that people get better, dramatically better. I could show you research published in the Lancet, best journal in the world, that shows 100% of people with rheumatoid arthritis get better in a week. Anyway, my experience has been, and what I will tell your listeners, is that almost all of them will get dramatically better, and it starts happening about 4 to 7 days after they change the diet. It takes about 4 months to really get things resolved, but it just starts really quickly. So you start with a basic starch-based diet. The next step you go to is a gluten-free diet, because some people have, rare. It's really rare. It's like 1 in 250 people, but I know everybody's got a gluten problem out there, so be it. About 1 in 100 to 1 in 250 people has celiac disease. They need to be on a gluten-free diet. So that's the next step. You get rid of wheat, barley, and rye. And then the last step I use with these people is called an elimination diet. Mm-hmm. Very simple meal plan. And you can find all that in my May 2014 newsletter. And we could go back to what you said before, which is why some people don't get well. Well, there are genetic issues. There's previous damage. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of damage from their autoimmune diseases. So there's bad luck, the wrath of God, genetic diseases, previous damage. And then I mention something about people sometimes really don't understand, and they just don't do it. Well, plain and simple, they just even though they think they are, and they'll look you right in the eye and say, I do everything you say, and I'm not getting better. I know, because I've been doing this for 40 years, I know that when we take the time to kind of discuss it thoroughly, that they're not doing what I say. They're really not, and that's okay. No criticism intended. We just have to work on it to get to where they can get better. And it almost always happens, Will. But then again, there are some people who have previous damage, genetic issues, wrath of God, bad luck, or you know what, Will? Sometimes I'm wrong. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often, but just sometimes plain and simple, I don't know why they have an autoimmune diseases, and my best tricks didn't solve the problem. And I'll tell you why I know that's the case. Because when I get really desperate with a patient, and I think they've done everything that I can get them to do, I will send them to a friend of mine. His name is Alan Goldhammer, and he runs True North, which is a fasting center where they will lock these resistant people up, and they will give them nothing but water. And I have done this, maybe this happens to me with my patients, maybe one patient every 2 years. So I'll send them to my good friend, Dr. Goldhammer, and he will lock them up and he'll put them on only water. And you know what, Will? I'd have to say most of them, as hard as I've tried, as hard as they've tried, when I send them to a water fast, very few of them, it solves the problem. Occasionally, but very few. So yes, Will, there are some things that I just plain and simple don't know that are beyond, my expectations. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often.
Are there times when you might consider or use some kind of medication?
All the time. I use I have a prescription pad. I'm licensed to practice medicine in 5 states in the United States. I'm a board-certified internist. I publish the highest quality scientific research. I think I'm respected by my colleagues. I'm pretty sure I am, at least to my face. I never get criticism. Behind my back, who knows what happens. So I use drugs. I find myself using cholesterol-lowering medications called statins in some of my cardiac patients. I use thyroid supplementation. I use hormone replacement therapy on women sometimes that need that help. I use blood pressure pills when they're needed. I use insulin for my diabetics. I use painkillers like aspirin. We were just talking about autoimmune diseases. I take care of a lot of inflammatory rheumatoid psoriatic arthritis patients. And plain and simple, they've had this disease, 10, 20, 15 years. They've got deformed joints. They've got chronic pain. I put them on aspirin. I occasionally use some bulking agents for the bowels, and sometimes people have to take a little antacid. But I don't use much medicine, but when necessary, I do. I am not an alternative medicine doctor. I am not a holistic doctor. I'm a standard, regular medical doctor. It's just that I don't treat food poisoning with drugs. I fix the food poisoning. And I know you've been there, Will, and I do just want to emphasize these things because they're teaching tools that I think are very effective. Our website is all free, as you know. Everything you need to know is free on our website. And I did something called the Color Picture Book, which is published in probably 17 languages now. It's in Chinese and Korean and Indian and a couple of Indian dialects and Spanish and so on. It's called the Color Picture Books, and it's 66 pages of color pictures. And when you get done with that color picture book, you'll understand what food poisoning is and what those diseases are: diabetes, cancer, constipation, indigestion, obesity, arthritis. You'll see it, and you'll see what causes food poisoning, which is animal food. Animal food, I mean chicken, fish, beef, pork, cheese, milk. Animal food and vegetable oil, which I mean is olive oil, canola oil, corn oil, whatever oil you want to call it. That's how you get food poisoning. And you cure it by eating rice, corn, potatoes, beans, peas, and lentils, throw in a little kale, a little broccoli. That's how you cure it. And how often do you get cured? Well, about as often as a hardcore drunk who gives up a half a bottle of whiskey a day. That's about how often the cure rate is. I mean, it's just that simple, ladies and gentlemen. You will find no one who will disagree with me at any level of scientific basis No one can disagree with this because it's true. It's just like you could say the world is flat. It's not. The world is round. And, this is true. It's just true. And it always works. And it costs nothing. And it cuts your food bill by 40%. And as your wife so properly said, it also will be a big step in saving the environment. And, animals are pretty happy about not being slaughtered inhumanely, too, I would guess, if they knew. So it's all right. Everything's right. There's nothing wrong. Gladiators win battles in coliseums. Long-distance runners win. Your greasy skin goes away. You stop stinking like a dead animal. I mean, where do you want to go?
That's beautifully said, Dr. McDougall. Are you going to want to have your oatmeal pretty soon? We've been an hour into this.
I'm good. Go ahead. Did you have any other things you wanted to ask?
Yeah, there's lots of things. We could continue another time, or I can keep plowing through.
Will, it's fun to talk to you, and my guess is you've probably given your listeners about all they can handle for now.
Okay.
So why don't you see if we get a good response? People are welcome to email me if they have questions. As you know, you email me all the time, and I generally get to all my emails. Definitely. If you'll just spend a little time on the website, there's a search engine there that's absolutely free, and you can add whatever you want to that search engine box, and you'll get some extremely easy to understand, highly scientifically documented thoughts from me. I've been writing since 1986. I've been writing newsletters, so that's how many years? A long time. And I've written, several national best-selling books, and color picture book. If you've got 10 minutes, it'll change your life. It's all free. So maybe those listeners who have enjoyed this time that you and I have spent together will take a little trouble to go to the website and some of the other websites you recommend, and maybe get some questions or comments, and we can do it later. How's that sound?
That sounds great. When people ask me, I usually go Dr. McDougall plus whatever they ask, and it gets me to one of your newsletters or one of your articles, and then I forward that to them.
Yeah,
I've done a video where I encourage people to do that, themselves as well.
Thank you.
But I do like to answer.
We're very well represented on the internet. Fortunately, I hadn't thought about that. You could go to Google and just put in Dr. McDougall and rheumatoid arthritis, and it'll probably come up. Or you can put in Dr. McDougall and some of the low carbers out there. Some of the people who are teaching low carb diets and trying to convince you to not eat rice and corn and beef and pork, and to instead eat beef and pork. I bet if you put in Dr. McDougall and any of these low carbohydrate dieters, you'd find that I have written something very, very specific about these people. And I think you may find that I said, I try and reserve my emotional comments for when I'm with friends. But clearly I have taken these people who represent what I consider to be harmful, dangerous information. I have clearly outed them the best I can. And you know what? They've never objected. So it must be true.
Yeah.
And I'm certain it is. So don't get confused. Don't get off track by some expert who stands up and says you shouldn't eat grains. They'll cause brain damage. Or you shouldn't eat wheat because they'll give you a wheat belly. Or you'll get this big fat surprise if you read my scientific interpretation of the literature. Ladies and gentlemen, these people are not telling the truth. I know the science. I have some ideas about some of their motivations, but the bottom line is they're wrong, and the consequences of them being wrong is the children stay sick and constipated, the adults stay diseased and non-productive. And eventually, Will, you and I will bring these well-intentioned ladies and gentlemen on stage, as I've done on occasion, and hopefully I'm strong enough and live long enough to continue in the future, and properly embarrass them for what they're doing. Yeah, because what they're doing is harmful and it's wrong.
It sure is.
But the meat, dairy, and egg industry are happy. And let me just end with one other thing, Will. is a lot of the listeners out there and their friends are very happy to hear these messages from the low carbers. And the reason is, as you've heard me say many times before, is people love to hear good news about their bad habits. So find me a diet doctor that says I can eat pepperoni pizza and I'll follow him to my grave.
Yeah, that's great. Did you want to quickly mention the upcoming Advanced Study Weekend? I know there's an internet available.
Oh yeah, there is. You can watch it on the internet. It's not free, but it's I think a pretty reasonable. We have a weekend. It starts Friday, so today's Monday. We have Marion Nestle.
Mm-hmm.
Marion Nestle wrote a book has written many books. She's one of the most powerful people in the world politically. I mean, she deals in politics and the food industry. Marion Nestle will be our guest on Friday night. Dan Buettner, who wrote the Blue Zones.
Mm-hmm.
You know about the Blue Zones.
Yeah.
If you don't know about the Blue Zones, it's the populations on planet Earth that are the longest lived and healthiest, like the Okinawans, and the people in Sardinia, Italy, and the Seventh-day Adventist. And there's a population of people in Costa Rica. There's just these groups of people, and they all have in common certain things. And one of the things they have in common is they eat a starch-based diet. So Dan Buettner will be talking on Sunday morning at our Advanced Study Weekend. And, of course, you can get all this on the internet. You could also come. We're in Santa Rosa, California. There's probably room for you. And the other person we're having speak is H. Gilbert Welch. Dr. Welch was in the newspaper last week. Is in the newspaper 2 or 3 times a month. H. Gilbert Welch is from Dartmouth College. He publishes in the big 5 medical journals. That means the Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, etc. And he is trying to save the public from unnecessary testing and treatment. He has a new book out called Less Medicine, More Health. It just came out. It comes out this week. And H. Gilbert Welch will tell you that it is dangerous to have mammograms done and to do PSA testing and testing for kidney cancer and thyroid cancer. This is one of the best researchers in the world, most respected. Every doctor in your community, I guarantee you, should know about and probably does know about H. Gilbert Welch's work. So he'll be there this weekend. And a couple of months ago, I had as my guest Peter Gertzke. You can find all these people on my website where you can watch them free. Peter is the head of the Cochrane Collaboration, which is the most respected opinion in the world. Every doctor, every scientist in your audience knows about Cochrane. And so Peter was out teaching at one of our weekends. I try and get guests that will help my listeners. They will either help protect them from aggressive medical care like heart surgery and breast amputations and all these extremely powerful autoimmune drugs. So I bring in the world experts, people published in the major journals, to tell them that this behavior on the part of the medical businesses, and they are businesses, the drug industry, the doctor business, the hospital business, these people are hurting you. And the science clearly says they are. So that's what H. Gilbert Welch does. And then I bring in other people who try and help you understand the truth you and I, Will, are trying to share with these people, and that is that there is a diet for human beings, and you can cure food poisoning almost overnight. The Advanced Study Weekend people don't necessarily agree with me, but they have valued opinions. You'll find no guests at our weekend who teach the McDougall message other than me. All these people have something different to say, like Alan Goldhammer is going to be there and talk about water fasting. Mm-hmm. And Roseanne Oliveira will be there, who's a professor at UC Davis, happens to be a veterinarian, who will talk to you about animal disease. Who else do we have? Terry Mason, a famous cardiologist from Chicago, will be there. I left some people out, but we have phenomenal guests for this weekend. And yes, it is available on the internet. You can watch it in Shanghai. You can watch it in Hong Kong. It's, I think, relatively inexpensive, but it costs us about about $30,000 to put it on this broadcast, so I have to recoup some of the money. It's very professional, extremely professional broadcast. So you can watch the whole weekend almost live if you want.
Yeah, I think we're
Go to the
definitely going
website.
to sign up for that, and we'd love to get out to Santa Rosa sometime. The Costa Rica trip will be the first big thing, and then after that,
Oh yeah, that's gonna be cool.
that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to, for on many reasons, the food. Trying out different things, just seeing what's there, and meeting you guys and other people that want to eat this way, and obviously the beautiful environment will be awesome, and the adventures as well.
Yeah. We've done it about 30 times, the Costa Rica trip, and so we've probably taken probably 4,000 people there already.
Wow.
We hope to go every year for the next 20 years, but who knows, Will?
Yeah.
There's a good chance I'll die someday.
Hope not.
I hope not too, but I bet I will. But in the meantime, I'm going to try as hard as I can. I certainly appreciate people like you who, help share my message and similar messages with other folks.
Well, I'm so appreciative, and thank you so much for your time and spreading this amazing message. So
It was fun.
it's so much fun. We'll talk to you soon.
Hopefully, we get some good feedback from the listeners.
Definitely. Talk to
Okay.
you. Okay. Bye-bye, Dr.
Bye-bye.